short stories, please do press the subscribe button. AD 201, A Space Odyssey. Dr. Zach McQueen had heard the stories about the lost papers of SPQR. That's Senatus Populus Romanus, the Senate and the Roman people. This subject had been the ramblings of a Dr. Charles Ferris in the mid-19th century. Most had dismissed it as sensationalism from a none-too-successful archaeologist. He argued that they had been suppressed by the Catholic Church when discovered in the 8th century due to their contents being too scandalous for Christian eyes and ears. Zach had been working in and around Colchester for the last 2 years and was now into his last year of funding. So it was timely that he finally discovered what looked to have been an intact scroll. It was embedded inside a tomb that had just been excavated by his small team. There was much excitement when it was brought back to the lab to be carefully opened, catalogued, and transcribed. Thank God he had put the effort in to learn Latin in those undergraduate years. This one was damned hard to translate. "Martha, you're not going to believe this," he said to his most senior doctoral student. "What's that? Something interesting, is it?" Her left eyebrow arched for her predisposed skepticism. "This is written by Marcus Maticus, a centurion, dated 201 in May. He's talking of a wild tale of what reads like an alien abduction that those wacky Americans talk about," holding up his transcription as if his handwriting is deceiving him. "That's completely implausible. It must be a very elaborate prank from someone in the team." "Martha, when was the last time you met an archaeologist that did pranks?" Now it was his turn to look incredulous. "You're right," without a trace of irony. "I'll take it to the radiocarbon team to date this, and we'll see if someone has been up to no good or not." Putting on her gloves to insert the scroll into a box for the nearby university campus. "How long have I known you, Zach?" asked his friend Rob. "I'd say 15 years, looking at Rob quizzically. "Well, on this occasion, I found myself being interested in one of your archaeological discoveries for the first time," sliding his coffee cup out of the way to set down the papers that he had brought with him. Zach had insisted they met off campus in a cafe out of town to avoid being overheard. Zach sat forward and leaned his torso at the table expectantly. "Well?" "The hallmarks are all there. The craft in the sky like a circular shield, in his words, but larger than a warship. Then grey-coloured beings walking him up a long ramp and into the spacecraft. This just gets better. Removing his clothes, examining him, taking hair, nail clippings and skin scrapings, and what I can assume to be his primitive description of needles probing his head." Rob put down the papers and leaned back in his chair, looking as satisfied as a fisherman with a prize marlin. "What hallmarks?" "This is like for like what people have been recording since the 1960s. It's uncanny that this account shows up circa 1760 years before. I mean, setting aside academic curiosity, this is frankly earth-shattering." "Assuming it is a viable primary source from that time, of course," patting Rob's forearm with affection that was bordering on condescension. Rob didn't take any notice of a perceived slight. He was like a kid with a new toy. "How long until you know the scroll is a genuine artifact?" "In about a week," Zach sighed. "Be that as it may, let's assume for the sake of argument that this is a genuine document. There are a couple of avenues to explore for our centurion. He may have had a great imagination, or have been on some sort of hallucinogenic drugs perhaps. Either way, his description could just be a big coincidence. And the other? Zach was now slumped back in his seat. Well, if this is genuine, Zach, then it upends everything we know about ancient cultures and alien encounters. You'd be world famous. Laughing and signalling to the waitress to bring them 2 more coffees. Matey, if I publish this, assuming the dating returns a positive result, I'll be a laughingstock for promoting idiocy like this. It's akin to advocating for the lost papers of SPQR. But I'm in a no-win situation here. My funding runs out in 6 months, so I need to do something. Okay, we found a pretty run-of-the-mill tomb on our dig, but this is unlike anything I've ever heard of. It'll rock the establishment of archaeology and history too. Publish and be damned, Rob jested. Zach was momentarily distracted by the sound of beans grinding for their next cup of coffee. He was going to be totally jazzed on caffeine by the time he went back to campus. In a fortnight, he was due to meet the faculty head to discuss the future of his post at the university. The following week, they met in a pub in the centre of town. Zach had insisted that they not message each other about the details and just use the code word centurion on the subject matter they were going to discuss. They sat down with their pints. Well then, 007, said Rob, barely containing himself. Blimmin' genuine for 1st to 3rd century from the lab results, holding his head in his hands. Rob clapped his hands. Uncomfortable as it may be, you also need to be open and minded enough to think that maybe this Marcus Maticus account is true. Could your mind contemplate that, my friend? I guess this is out of my hands. I think I've been able to come to terms with it, given that his account and its veracity will always be a matter of speculation. Rob looked at Zach, wide-eyed, and pointed to the door of the pub. Who the hell are these grey creatures coming towards us? He stammered.